Welcome to part two of our Ideal Diet Masterclass. So, in part one, we talked about promoting our body's own natural capacity to heal with lemon water and seaweed. And now we'll be talking about simplifying and adding in ancestral foods because they are literally pre programmed into your DNA to be the best foods for you. So, before bringing in new supportive foods, it's important to simplify because we live in a processed food culture and in a culture where packaged and canned foods have a long shelf life because they're filled with preservatives and antibiotics and hormones. And we don't really want those things in our body. They're endocrine disruptors, so they make our body's own hormonal systems function not quite as smoothly as we would want them to. And they're not as close to the source as our bodies ideally need in terms of true nourishment. So look around your kitchen, your pantry, look at things that are in bags and boxes and cans, and think about which ones you might be able to slowly let go of. Finish up that last bag of crackers or chips or candy or cookies. Use up some cans of food that you might have around and kind of think about starting fresh, right? And cooking from the source with as many whole foods as possible definitely requires time. It requires this investment in our health. And from my perspective, if we don't eat, we die. So we might as well focus on eating and focus on savoring our food as well as on preparing food that is really delicious, nutrient dense, and ideal for our body's proper functioning. So it might seem like it's quicker or easier to eat prepared meals or packaged foods. However, in the end, it causes more imbalances in our body, potentially more trips to the doctor, and potentially more expenditure on medications that then also have their own side effects to mitigate, right? So I think really the first step in terms of preventative care is getting out the antibiotics and the hormones and the preservatives. So thinking not only about packaged foods, but also about the kind of meat that we eat for those of us who are meat eaters, and trying to get animal foods that don't have growth hormones and antibiotics in them, because those truly are hard for our system to flush out over time. So once we've spent 10 days kind of going through foods, eating the last of them, moving some of them along, and starting to simplify our diet, we can then think about bringing in those ancestral foods. So who were your people? Who are your ancestors? What's your heritage? If you don't know, ask people in your family and get more information. Do genetic testing and take a look at a website like 196 Flavors, which gives global maps of the origins of many of the foods that we eat. So once you know more about your people and where they came from, you can tap into what the original foods of that place were and start to think about things like certain coastal peoples, especially in northern climates, can tolerate dairy because historically and traditionally they've been eating dairy. However, folks from South Asian climates likely don't tolerate dairy very well. When I lived in Indonesia off and on for 4 years, I ate no dairy products because they weren't available. They're not a food of that culture beyond mother's milk. And I drank a lot of coconut milk instead, which is highly available and highly antimicrobial and antibacterial, which is really helpful in a tropical climate. So start to think a little bit about the foods of your heritage and bring those into your diet slowly. See how they resonate. See how you feel as you're eating more simply and eating more ancestral foods. And after going through this process, it's much easier to hear the body's cues for true nourishment, to not hear cravings that are based on imbalanced gut bacteria in our system that craves carbohydrates, that craves sugars, but truly hearing the cravings based on a balanced gut microbiome. So in part 3, we will talk about intuitive eating, our innate immune system, and the gut microbiome. I will look forward to seeing you then.